Let's do it. Hello and welcome. This is lecture 4 of Beauty and the Beast. And, well, if you haven't seen the first few lectures, it is going to be above. But if you have seen the first 3 and you are ready to go along, we are ready to expand on, well, this crazy journey that we're on. So, what happens, right? So we've already established. Lecture 2 is the establishment of what are all these characters, these tools, these servants, right? These are the repressed personalities of the beast, right? We could say order, extroversion, wisdom, all the child hero, right? All of these characters are characters that are repressed within the beast. So now we established that Belle is going to be the savior of that. Belle is going to come in and she's going to try to figure out how to, well, open him up, right? Open him up. And this is the fundamental archetype of Beauty and the Beast. We've gotten past the idea of Belle opening up. Belle opening up is, there must be more than this provincial life. I'm in a little town. I'm in a town that doesn't really, we'll say, know anything beyond self-interest or know anything beyond the culture that was established for him. And you have someone like Belle who's saying, no, I'm going to go beyond that. So after she goes beyond that, we have these two people clash, right? That's exactly what happens here. So what's the next thing that she does? She meets the repressed personalities, right? She meets, Lumiere, right? She meets Lumiere, and she meets Cogsworth, and she meets Mrs. Potts, and she meets all these people. And that's all summed up in the song, Be Our Guest, right? Where, they put on this whole show for her. And, well, it's clear, right? It's pretty clear. Once you put everything together now, it's like, okay, what does this represent? It's like, okay, Belle has gone into the beast, right? She's starting to understand the beast, and she realizes that he's an incredibly repressed individual, and that there are an incredible amount of problems that exist within the beast, right? So she meets all these personalities and she understands, okay, why are you not, why are you not human? She's asking all these questions. What is wrong with you? But one of the redeeming qualities about Belle is that Belle sees them as human, right? She doesn't see them as objects. She talks to them. She interacts with them. All these incredible things happen. And, this is partially why she's the redeemer. So yeah, this definitely goes along with the idea. It says, it's been years since we've had anybody here and we're obsessed. That's exactly what, that's what the dove, right? She's sort of the representation of a dove. That's what, she's the mop, right? And that's what she's saying because... No, well, she's the duster, right? She's the duster. And she's saying that, and that's essentially what everybody's saying, because they're saying we've been repressed for so long, and finally we have some outlet to show ourselves. And so that's what happens, and now we're going to sort of track, as she sort of goes along the beast. You could watch. So the first thing that the beast does is, the first thing that he does, besides screaming at the father and locking him up, is screaming at his own repressed personalities. Whenever he sees whenever the Mrs. Potts and Cogsworth and all of them are trying to get him to knock on her door and invite her to dinner and do all of these things, he just screams at them. He just lashes out at them. And, it shows the state of things. It shows where we begin. It shows where the beast is before he meets Belle. He has so many personalities that are locked within his castle. They can't leave, but they're locked within him. And he treats them like crap, right? He treats them like crap, and he's going to have to figure out a way to, hopefully by the end, see their humanity, right? See their, from a personality standpoint, we'll say, integrate those personalities into his actual personality, because the problem right here is the person that is the personality of the beast is, not good. Okay, it's a poorly formed ego in the Jungian sense, or just more simply, it's someone that you don't want to be around. It's somebody who acts and lives and breathes as somebody who you don't want to be around. And the answer, the key, lies in the personalities that he's repressing. So So here's the fundamental archetype. Here's the fundamental idea that we're sort of going to be dealing with, and I hinted at it before, but not completely. So it lies in this idea of the West Wing, right? It lies in this idea of what's her name, Belle, of Belle going into the West Wing. So the thing that they tell her is, Belle, don't go into the West Wing because that's the forbidden place. And well, the first thing that you know about that is, whenever you try to tell anybody, don't look there, don't go there, don't think about a purple elephant right now, all of these ideas, you're going to do the exact opposite. That's just part of our human nature. And the reason why, and this is especially important for this, is because we have this natural desire to explore. We have this natural desire to go outside of our bounds and well, to understand. So that's exactly what Belle does. She says, okay, I'm meeting all these personalities. I'm starting to understand sort of what the beast is like. And, well, she goes into the West Wing. So she goes into the West Wing and she finds all, exactly what he doesn't want her to see, right? The idea of the rose and the idea of the mirror. He sees all of it, and, well, so here's the idea, right? So here's the important idea here, So here's her sort of like touching the rose. The idea here is that for the man, right? So we kind of explained this before, but not completely. So we explained the fact that he's repressed, right? He's a repressed guy, and at the same time, he's not at his full potential. We're talking about the beast here. He's almost unconscious, right? Like what is he, right? He's an animal, right? And he's a representation of an animal who doesn't have the potential to become human, or at least to our knowledge, doesn't have the potential to become human. And what does that mean? It means that he's almost acting on his own instincts. And if we're going to go back to the exact idea, that's the Peter Pan character here. That's the prince sitting on the golden throne, spoiled, getting every single thing that he wants, only acting in his own self-interest. That is, turning him into a beast is therefore only just the representation of that. The fact that he turns into an animal means that he's just acting on his own animalistic impulses. The problem with this is, well, very simple, right? The problem is he doesn't have any parts of his humanity, right? He's not a human. And the case that they're trying to make here, and I think this is a really, really interesting but strong case, is that we're animals, right? We're animals, and it is actually more of a privilege to become a human. It's an idea that I've been circulating for a very long time, but it's a very noble one. So let's first I'll explain to you how this exactly plays out. Why is it that in the intro to the original movie that we are compared, or the townspeople are compared to sheep, right? What is it that makes them sheep? And the answer is because they follow their animal instinct to conform, right? And what is the reason why the prince turns into the beast? It's because he follows his animalistic impulse to self-interest. The case that this movie is making here is that it's a bold statement. It's a really bold statement. It's like, it says something like, most people live as animals, and most people follow their animalistic impulses. And I don't believe that that's wrong. Like I think that, well, you meet a bunch of psychologists, they're called the deterministic psychologists, and they'll tell you that we're completely acting on our animal impulses, or something like that. But I don't think that's completely wrong. I don't think that idea doesn't have that much merit. I think in America we have something like 2/3 of Americans are overweight. It's like, why are we so overweight? And the reason is because if you were to throw food in front of us, unhealthy food, we're going to eat it. It's not like we have the strength, the willpower, the whatever, the human aspect of us to turn it down. There's an idea, there's a great experiment that you could do if you're a little bit sadistic was the term that was used. It was in one of the TED Talks that I listened to. It was really funny. What you could do is you take a bird, right, and you lock him up in a cage, and you give him food in one corner, and you give him cocaine in the other corner, and you tell him, go for it. I'm giving you unlimited supplies of cocaine. I'm giving you unlimited supplies of food, and good luck. And what will end up happening, and this is the unfortunate reality, this is our animal instinct, is that the bird will eventually just find the cocaine and then just keep going for the cocaine. It will look for cocaine so much and develop such a strong cocaine addiction that it never goes for the food, and eventually, even though it was given food, it dies of starvation. And well, it's a sad reality. The sad reality is, this animalistic impulse that we have, these desires that we're given are not complete, and there's something in the human aspect, right? There's something in the human functioning that gives us the ability to say no, right? Like we turn down cocaine in general as a society, and well, the only reason is because there's some human aspect of us in there telling us to say no. So the problem with essentially every single, I'm not going to say every problem, but many, many problems that exist in our society in relation to something like addiction and something like conformism is that all that we do is go off our animal instincts. The question is, why do people conform? And you could really look at the degree in which that plays out in the idea of the Milgram experiment. If you've ever heard of it, it's a crazy, crazy experiment. But the question is, why do we conform? Why do we obey? Why don't we form our own individual thoughts? And why do we just sort of follow the mob or follow the whatever society tells us to do? And the answer is something like, we are animals. We are pack animals, and therefore we're going to follow our animalistic instincts. So the question is, what is Belle doing here, right? You could say, in a literal sense, you could say she's going to find the rose, right? And of course she is, but the question is, what does that mean? And it seems like the question, the answer is she's going into the part of him that's human, right? Because we established this before. The rose is a representation of life. The rose is a representation of something that goes beyond self-interest. We established this with the old hag that goes and says hi to him, offers him a rose, something that doesn't give you monetary value, but gives you some sort of spiritual value, some sort of humanistic, deep value. And what is the meaning behind Belle going there and finding it for him? It's simple. She's discovering his humanity, and that's not a... Well, it's a very archetypal idea. It's a very, very strong idea, and it could really be explained by evolution. I actually read this book. It was called A Billion Wicked Thoughts it was like Ogi Ogas, and it was incredible. He explained sort of the evolutionary process in which women started choosing men, because if you think of something like a monkey, you think of something like a chimpanzee, they don't choose men. They start ovulating, and then men sort of fight amongst themselves, and then the most powerful man is most likely going to win, and therefore he gets to have access to the woman. He sort of fights them off, tells them to go away, and then passes his genes on to the next generation. The only problem with that, and this is an idea that he explored in very deeply, is the idea that competence is not important in there. Humanistic values are not important. It's about who's stronger. It's about who is more dominant, but it's not about who's smarter. And, well, you could say that's why they're chimpanzees, right? That's why they're still monkeys. That's why they weren't able to develop such a highly complex logical brain. But eventually, sometime across the transition from monkeys to human, the women were the ones who started saying, wait a second, I'm going to start selecting. Instead of saying, I'm going to let the men select amongst themselves, they say, I'm going to start selecting. I'm going to start saying no to people, and I'm going to choose a particular set of traits because these particular set of traits are very important. One of those traits happened to be competence. And that really makes sense because once we started evolving, it was, the people who were most successful were the people that could hunt properly and the people that could, create the best bows and create the best shelters and create all of these highly complex things. And therefore, the idea that women are selecting for, the people who were most successful in that area and therefore selecting the most competent men, that leads to the drive in evolution, and that's exactly what's happening. So the archetypal idea there is that a woman makes a man conscious, right? A woman makes a man human, right? Brings him from his animalistic impulses to a humanistic idea. And that's something that's explored twice in this movie. If you're to remember, what is the thing that turned the prince into a beast in the first place? Rejection from a woman. Because what happens when you get rejected by a woman, the first thing that you do is you say, what's wrong with me? And you become conscious. So that's exactly what happens, and obviously he gets rejected by the woman and then becomes a beast because he realizes that he's inadequate, and that's sort of the idea. So the idea here is that a woman makes a man conscious, and you could see this in your own life. You could see this really play out across intimate relationships, which are found to be incredibly interesting. So it's mostly something that we've really found in the research done by Martin Seligman. So Martin Seligman he was the head of the American Psychological Association, and he found that women on average are more depressed than men. And you got to ask the question, why? And one explanation, which is somewhat simple and somewhat can be verified by experience, is just that women are more conscious than men. Women are more aware, and they're often not as impulsive as men, which is a true statement across the board. But another potential explanation so here's the full explanation brought in there. So because women are more conscious than men, therefore they feel more. Therefore they can't repress as much as possible, and therefore they feel positive thoughts as well as negative thoughts more. And that's something that we could definitely verify by experience. And Martin Seligman kind of proved this in his book. It was Learn Optimism. He explained. He said the reason why women are more depressed than men is not because, there are many factors, but one of them is because whenever women feel sad, they talk about it, right? They decide to become conscious about it. What do men do whenever they feel sad? They drink. They distract themselves. They do something to bring them away from consciousness. And, what do you have as a result? You have more women are depressed. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because women now feel, they're now conscious, but at the same time they're depressed. Is it a good thing or a bad thing for the men? You could say that, they're not depressed, but at the same time they're just running away. They're just distracting themselves. And so really it goes both ways. So the answer is, since men love to distract themselves and since men love to run away, what is the thing that's going to make them conscious? What is the thing that's going to say, okay, I'm going to actually have to sort of, confront my problems? It's a woman. It's a woman, because there's nothing worse than getting rejected by a woman. And to develop a relationship with a woman, or we'll say a opposite sex partner, is it's more. It requires you to go deeper into yourself. It requires you to understand the other person's humanity. Instead of, you think of the prehistoric man, all they had to do was hunt. It's like, no, you can't just hunt now. You have to do something more. You have to understand the humanity of the woman, and therefore, if you don't, then you will get rejected. And therefore, you must become conscious. You must become human to understand the humanity inside of the woman. And that's a representation here of the woman discovering the rose within the man, the woman discovering the life within the man, and well, if we could tie it all together perfectly, it's the woman discovering the repressed humanity within the man, because you give this goes with men and women, but it's definitely more true amongst men. It's like you give them some Family Guy, a couch, and maybe some sort of something like popcorn, and they could just sit there and amuse themselves for the next 4 to 6 hours. Women, it's not really the same thing, and that's really what it is. Like, men are very, very much willing to suppress this part of them. They're very, very much willing to suppress this human side of them, and that's exactly what the beast does. So the beast sees her in here, and where is it? I think it was right here. So the beast sees her and he kicks her out. He says, "You just went into a part that you weren't supposed to see," and well, I don't want you to do that, right? I really don't want you to do that. So So we could say maybe this is the first step of development. It's the first try. It's the first try for the women to try to open up the guy, and clearly it was a failure. So there was another explanation that I really wanted to give here. I don't know if it's completely related. I'll go with no. Actually, I'll go with yes. Screw it. Why not? So, the idea that I've been thinking about very recently is the idea of, so we were talking about this just now, the idea of evolution, right? When you have something like evolution, it goes something like this, monkey's in a tree, monkey falls from a tree, and monkey is unconscious. Monkey must go through something resembling a hero's journey and become the first human. He must, well, think about it, when monkey falls from a tree, he must face jaguars, snakes, jaguars, snakes, gorillas, all of these characters, and he must become competent and smart enough to beat them out. So we'll say that's something like becoming conscious. And then what happens across the evolution process of something like 200,000 years, what ends up happening is you go from a monkey to a human. And what is the difference between a monkey and a human? The difference is a monkey is not conscious and a human is conscious. And somewhere along this path, you go from monkey to human, right? And we could say that's evolution in a nutshell. Now I was thinking, as a human being, do we evolve? Do we go through this same sort of process? And the answer that I came to was almost an undefiable yes. So the answer here seems to be an undeniable yes. And it's something like, well, when you're born, you're a baby, right? You think, okay, who's smarter? A chimpanzee or a baby? Like a 2-month-old baby. And clearly, a chimpanzee is a lot smarter. And at some point, the So we could say that as a baby, you are conscious, you are unconscious, right? You are completely unconscious, completely dependent upon your mother, and at the same time, completely vulnerable. So you're essentially like a monkey that just fell down from the tree, right? So this is something that we could fundamentally come to an agreement on, is that at one point we're a monkey, right? And that could be, anywhere from 2 years old to the 30-year-old living in his mother's basement, because you could say that someone like that is taken up no responsibility and is therefore just acting off their primal instincts, and or something like a heroin addict, something like a drug addict or an alcoholic. We look at those people and we say, okay, they're essentially acting off their primal instincts, and obviously that's the fully articulated extreme of that, but that's essentially right. So here's the fundamental idea. So I just took the entire idea of evolution and brought it down into the individual, and it really relates to this idea of the beast. The idea of, in this case, the monkey. You ask the question. It's not, or at least we come to the final conclusion that it's not a question as to. It's not a question as to whether or not we are the beast. It's as a question of when we shed that idea of the beast. Because no matter what, as a child, like when you're 2 years old, you are a monkey, right? And maybe when you're 10 years old, you're a monkey, and most likely you will be. And maybe when you're 15 years old, you act like a monkey, mostly off your primal instincts, not really conscious about what's going on, and not really, understanding the world from a deeper perspective. And then, you keep taking that, you keep extracting that, and you ask the question, when do you become an adult? When do you become an adult? When do you become a fully mature being? And when, if we're gonna sort of tie all these together, when do you finally in this idea of adulthood adopt the personalities of, we'll say, Cogsworth and Lumiere and Mrs. Potts and all these different characters, right? When does this happen, and when do we shed this idea of the beast? And that's a better way of looking at it. It's a better way of understanding it, because it really helps you understand, this beast is something that lies within every single one of us. It's something that, well, never goes away. That's another strong idea. It's like even when you become an adult, you never really get rid of this beast. This beast is always something that lies within you. You're always an animal, and God, the social media companies have been able to prove this so incredibly well. It's like, how easily can you turn somebody from a fully functioning human being into somebody who just sits there and scrolls for 2 hours? And, well, if this was 30 years ago, I would have said that would have been, I bet you, well, I would not have been alive, but, the people, I think, would have said that's almost impossible. It's almost impossible that you could get someone to do it so easily, but the social media companies have proven time and time again that all it takes is just a little trigger. All it takes is a little, a little notification for you to go from a fully functioning, articulate human being having a conversation to someone who sits on their phone for the rest of a dinner meal, because, well, we're animals, and our animal impulses in that moment are saying, keep scrolling. So this is the idea. The idea is that at one point, and this is exactly what Beauty and the Beast is about, is that we're going to have to sort of overcome that, and that idea is represented in the figure of Gaston, right? Gaston is the perfect representation of, we'll say, well, we already explained essentially what he is, but for our intents and purposes, he's going to be the representation of what the beast was, right? He's the representation of the prince, and, well, it's pretty obvious, right? It's pretty obvious that that he doesn't care about anything beyond. That's a good way of looking at it. He's essentially a monkey. Think of him like that way. Like every single thing that he does is based off dominance. Every single thing that he does is based off of power and social structures and moving up some sort of, we'll say, social ladder, but at the same time, there's really no cognition there. There's really nothing that he does where you really say, okay, he's thinking, So, and that's the representation of someone who never grows. And, well, so the beast is eventually going to have to fight that off, right? The beast is eventually going to have to sort of figure that out. But right now, we have something like Belle coming in, and she finds the rose, right? She finds, we'll say, the hidden humanity within himself. And that, you could also say that's a symbol of maturity, right? Like what she's doing here, she's essentially saying, from the age of 0 to 12, you really just acted on your own self-impulses, right? Like, you're just completely self-interested, and you never really cared about other people, right? It's you just don't, right? You just don't. You're a kid, and you haven't really embraced that. And then the thing that happens is maturity comes around, and real life comes around, and you realize that, wait a second, I have some really positive, incredible relationships, and you start to become conscious of the fact that, wait a second, this is more than just self-interest. This is something that's, we'll say, beautiful, something that's life-giving, and that's partially the reason why the rose, all the petals of the beast's rose fall apart by the time he reaches 21. It's because it's essentially saying, here's the process of maturity. By the time you reach 21, and that's sort of an arbitrary number, but we'll go with 21. 21 is the, we'll say, fundamental marker of adulthood. It's by the time you reach that point, the question is, are you mature? And have you recognized life, or are you still just a self-interested prick? Because that's what the prince was, and that's what Gaston is. And well, isn't that the fundamental question? So now, take the two ideas and put them together, right? You have something like evolution, where a monkey turns into a human, right? That's the entire thing. A monkey has to go through all these trials to become a human and transform. It's like, okay, what are you when you're a child? What are you when you're maturing? You're a monkey, essentially, right? You're just something acting off primal animalistic impulses. Because if you look at something like a child, if you look at something like a middle schooler and high schooler, they are pretty much acting off impulse. And what must they do? They must come and, we'll say, transform from something like a animal, something like an instinctual animal, to something like a human, something resembling a responsible adult. And, well, that's why these stories are relevant, right? That's why whenever you take something like an evolution story, right, or a creation story, which is really, really common, like you would think, okay, you could say the Bible has a creation story. You could say that evolution itself is simply just a creation story, the story that I just told you. You could say Star Wars offers a creation story. Moana offers a creation story. All of these movies and all of these stories that we have embedded in our culture, they have a framework as for how the world is structured and how the world came to be. It's also in the Matrix, right? In the Matrix, it's something like, well, let's see if it's irrelevant. But I'll still, I'll give you Moana, because Moana is a little bit more relevant. In Moana, it says, in the beginning, the world was only ocean. So there was no land, and it was completely chaos. There were no humans. And then the islands were pulled up, and God essentially came down and made order out of chaos, and then gave humans life. And, well, you could say that's exactly what a mother does, right? It's the same idea, right? When you were born, you were completely chaotic, and you're just completely acting off impulse. And then you could say God, which is either mother or culture or God, it could be so many things. Structure, whatever it is, decides to, well, create order out of this chaos. Create lands, create structure out of this chaos. And, Well, that's why all these stories become relevant. Because then it's not just a creation story anymore. It's not just a story of this is how the world is structured. It's a story now of, and it's an explanation of, this is how you are structured. You are structured in this way. The idea of the Adam and Eve falling from the Garden of Eden is not, this is just how humans in the past were. It's a story of, this is how you are, and you should interpret it that way. And, well, that's why the beast is so relevant, right? If we're getting back to beating the beast, this is exactly why he's so relevant. We have something like a maturity story. This is exactly what it is. It's a maturity story. So the idea here is that by the time he turns 21, all the petals on the rose will fall, and he will be stuck as a beast forever. And it's a strong idea. It says, by the time that you're done maturing, by the time that you're done changing, by the time that you've made order out of chaos, it's a question of which order have you made out of chaos? Have you established yourself as a good person and decided to choose that order, that structure, or have you decided to become Gaston, right? Who's clearly ordered, clearly structured, like he's clearly a put-together person, but he's put together in the wrong way, and that's exactly what the beast is. He's put together in the wrong way, and so, well, that's the idea behind the origin story. But anyways, so now you have Belle, right? So essentially, what happens is he tells her to go into the West Wing, right? Or at least the personalities, right? And this is a really good idea. So you have the tools, right? You have the personalities. You have the clock and the Lumiere and, and Mrs. Potts. Mrs. Potts is actually the one who does it. She says, don't go into the West Wing, right? They tell her not to go into the West Wing. And, well, first of all, right, I'll tell you exactly what happens, right, and then we'll break it down from there. You have something like, don't go into the West Wing. You tell any curious young person, don't do something, of course, they're going to do it, right? It's a simple thing that we kind of understand. I say, don't think of a pink elephant right now, and you think of a pink elephant. The reason why is because we humans are naturally designed to go outside of our borders. Every time we see a border, the first thing that we think is, how the hell do I break this down to figure out what's on the outside of it? And we'll say that's a good hero or heroine, right? That's a good person, because the problem is every time we have to make any sort of decision, we are bound by limited information. Always. That is a universal truth. We don't know everything about the world. So what do? We need to discover as much about the world as we possibly can so that we know how to navigate it. And the more that you know, the more that you can, we'll say, succeed. And that's exactly what Belle's doing here. So she sees, okay, well, I have this instinct to go into the West Wing because you tell me not to go there, but there's something in there that I have to see. There's something valuable that you don't want to show me, and therefore I need to get a fuller picture of, in this case, the beast. And what does she do? She goes in and she finds, first of all, his past, right? And second of all, she finds the rose. And, well, it's a pretty beautiful depiction, right? Like, okay, so she goes in and she finds the rose. And first of all, what does that mean, right? She finds the repressed life within him, right? Because we established that the rose is the representation of going beyond self-interest, or, life, roughly speaking. And he's been repressing it. That was shown right up here when you have that old hag offering him a rose, clearly nothing of value, but something of, we'll say, spiritual importance. And he rejects it. This is the prince rejecting it at the beginning. And we could say now that the beast now has this rose within him, right? He's seen the light. He's become slightly conscious, and he knows that there is this rose that exists within him, yet he chooses not to accept it. He chooses to leave it in his, we'll say, well, that's a good representation. He chooses to leave it in his West Wing. He chooses not to talk about it. And, well, that's the reason, pretty much, No, that's exactly the reason why the personalities, why Mrs. Potts, why Lumiere tell him not to go into the West Wing. It's because you have something like the hidden personalities inside of him, the repressed personalities, are screaming at her to open them up, to lock them up, to open them up because they're locked up. And well, the one thing that you can learn, and this is something that I dove into in my Moana lecture, but it's something that you can universally see. It's like if you repress something within you, if you just throw something into a closet, and that's a metaphor for gay people, right? Like coming out of the closet. If you leave something in your closet, then it just wants to come out. It just wants to come out. It's the same thing as the bottling up effect. You bottle up your emotions. We'll say that each of these tools represent one repressed emotion. So we'll say, yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. So let's look at this from the realm of anxiety, right? Let's say one bad thing happens to you, and then you repress it. It's like, okay, that's really not going to have that much of an effect on you, right? We'll say maybe you got a bad grade on a test. Doesn't matter. Then we'll say 3 more bad things happen to you. Let's say your friend gets a little mad at you. You guys get into a little bit of an argument. Your family, you start having a little bit of troubles there. And also, we'll say we'll say maybe your sleep schedule falls off a little bit, because then that has a little bit of a misaligning effect, where you sort of fall off your wheels. And well, let's say you suppress those too. It's like, okay, you could suppress those, and you could say, I'm just not going to focus on them right now. It's falling apart, but I really, I'm really not going to handle it right now. The problem is, then you have something like one more thing comes in, and 2 more things come in, and at some point, there's a straw that just breaks the camel's back, and that is an anxiety attack. That is depression. That is just torture, right? It's torture because whenever you decide to repress, let's say, 6 things at a time, they all come at you at once when you have that straw that breaks the camel's back. But if you face them one at a time, then it's really not as bad. And I think, there's a we'll say well-known stat that as social media and phone use have gone up, you have something like anxiety going up and depression going up. And I think that's one of the reasons. Because you think about it, and in the past, before phones existed, before you had any sort of, we'll say, video distraction that existed, you could simply lie in bed before you go to sleep, or go to the toilet, or go to the free time between activities. All of these, we'll say, little moments that exist throughout the day, you could use them to think, right? Because you go and you sit on the toilet, and there's something about sitting on the toilet that gets you thinking. It gets you going, right? And you start kind of analyzing all the things that happen throughout the day. But now take a moment like that, take a moment that used to be used for thinking, and use it as a moment for not thinking. Use it as a moment on social media while just you're sitting there looking at, we'll say, just endless videos. The problem with that is you never get to digest information. You never get to handle each moment as they come up. And what ends up happening is you distract yourself every single time from each of the, we'll say, bad potential catastrophes that are happening in your life. And eventually you reach the point where you've bottled up 5 things, and you haven't even noticed that you've bottled them up because you've been so distracted. And I read a book. It was called Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, and I think it was a really, really strong idea. That's exactly what he talked about. He said that humans are wired for silence. Like there should be times in your day where you are just sitting there thinking, and that is just something that we never had to manufacture. It just always happened. It always just so happened that there were times in your day for thinking. And, well, now we don't have that anymore. And the problem with that is you bottle up all your thoughts because you don't even realize that you're having the thoughts, and it all burst out in an anxiety attack. And it all bursts out, I think this is one of the most relevant things I've seen. It bursts out right before you go to sleep. Because you really think about it, if you've been distracting yourself for, we'll say, 15 hours or 16 hours, and then the one time where you're all alone with your thoughts is the moment right before you go to sleep, your brain has some catching up to do. It has some catching up to do. It says, okay, you've forgotten or at least not taken into account the 3 potential anxieties that could confront you, and you have to look at them now, right? This is what your brain's saying right before you go to sleep. It's saying you need to think. You need to consider a plan for this potential problem that's existing. And, well, it all hits you at once, right? When it all hits you at once instead of happening one at a time, that's the reason why people don't sleep. That's the reason why people can't sleep. It's because your mind just keeps going. And I've noticed this so many times that in my personal life where my mind just keeps going right before I sleep. And I usually see that as a sign that I usually see that as a sign that I need to think more throughout the day. So, well, getting back to this. So that's the reasoning as to why she goes into the West Wing, right? You have, well, okay, so let's relate that back literally to the idea of all these repressed thoughts are your repressed personalities. All these repressed thoughts are your repressed Mrs. Potts and Lumiere and Cogsworth and all of these people, and they're just begging you. They're just begging you to go into the West Wing. They're begging you to check out these thoughts, because if not, your body knows that you're going to have an anxiety attack. Your body knows that you're going to hold back all these thoughts for so long and just throw them in the closet. So that's why she goes into the West Wing, and that's why you have all the tools that are, all the personalities that are sort of leading her in that direction. I kind of like that idea. And so that's what happens, right? So she goes into the West Wing, and of course, what's going to happen? The Beast finds her and tells her to get out, because of course he does, right? He's repressing them. So he doesn't want her to see the potential life that exists within him, because the unfortunate reality is, and I think they depicted this really, really well. So you would imagine in a symbolic sense right now, Belle is going in and discovering the life that exists within him, the potential good that exists within him. And the problem with it is that it's a rose. The problem with it is that it's a flower. And the thing about flowers is that flowers die, and flowers are always falling apart. So what does that mean? That means that he's vulnerable, right? So whenever she decides to go into him, she realizes that she hit a part of him that's incredibly vulnerable, and that's why he screams at her and tells her to get out, because well, I'm not going to say unfortunate reality, because there's some good about it, but the reality is whenever you decide to, we'll say, pull back the layers of the things that you've repressed, you'll realize that there's a reason why you were repressing them in the first place, right? Just think about it, right? So you can think about this simply in somebody who had there's this idea called an adverse childhood experience, right? An adverse childhood experience is something like, we'll say, well, there are many things that consist of, but 64% of children have something called an adverse childhood experience. And what that could be is maybe your parent or family member is addicted to drugs. Maybe your parent or family member has gone to prison or has a mental illness, or you were sexually assaulted, and there was one more. I'm going to go with divorce, because I think, or at least we could just call that an adverse childhood experience, or maybe you were physically abused or something like that has happened to you, and, well, you just kind of bottle it up. You just don't really worry about it, and you ask the question, and here's an important question. It's like, why do you bottle it up in the first place? It's because it's painful, and you don't want to look at it. So the reality is, once you pull back the layers, once you start to figure out, okay, maybe I should stop suppressing this thought of my childhood and why it had such a negative effect on me. When you do that, you're going to have to confront the fact that it's painful to confront those thoughts. There's a reason why you suppress them in the first place. There's this really, really great, it was a riveting story that I heard, or that I read about the other day. It was one of the ladies that I had on my podcast. She was a shaman, and she was going on these like crazy spiritual experiences. And what happened was, she was prepared. She was ready. Like, she's been going through this sort of psychoanalytic training for essentially her whole life, and she was a pretty open person. So it's as if, we'll say, she's been, throughout the course of her life, she's been habitually confronting the thoughts whenever they come up. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But her husband was a habitual suppressor, right? And he had a really, really tough childhood. His childhood consisted of this terrible story where it was one night and his father came home drunk, and he was just laying there. He said he was 6 years old. And what happened is, his father would beat up his mother, and one day, and that night, he decided, he's like, I'm going to stop him from beating on my mother. I'm going to get in the way, and I'm going to do something sort of heroic. And the problem is, he's 6 years old and his father's drunk. So what ended up happening was, the father just beat the crap out of him. Just absolutely crushed. I think he said he lost a tooth. And bleeding, all of it. And what he did was, he was so drunk that he took his son, his 6-year-old son, who's now beat to a bloody pulp, and threw him in the attic. Said, stay here or I'll kill you, and left him there for the night. And he said that was the most miserable night of my entire life. And then the morning he woke up, and I think his mother found him and brought him into his room. And what happened with his mother was, his mother actually shielded him from his sister. So for a week, she just said he was sick and really didn't want to deal with it, and sort of hid the fact that he was abused. And then this, so essentially he was alone, right? He was completely alone, and his father was beating him, and this went on for years. Apparently there was this one time when he was, I think it was 14. No, he was still young, and he got a bunch of toys for Christmas. Obviously, your trucks and all of these things, and the dad got drunk, and he got so mad that he said there were too many toys that he had. The little boy, I think his name was Perry, he had too many toys, and he broke all the toys and started stabbing them with the plastic. And it was a really, really brutal time. Like, imagine that sort of childhood. And, well, what did he end up doing? He just completely ignored all of it. Right? He just ignored all of it for the rest of his life, and he realized by the time that he was 40, he never really thought about it. So his wife ends up going on these shamanistic experiences. It's a really, really, we'll say, deep introspective process. And she kind of brings him along with her, and he doesn't really want to deal with it. He's like, I don't want to go to these seminars. I don't want to have these, introspective experiences. I don't really care, but I'll do this because you're my wife, and I'll handle it. So he starts going through the introspective experiences, and one moment, he wakes up and he realizes, he's like, wait a second. I was abused as a child, and I was beaten, and I was suppressing it, and I haven't even thought of this for the last 35 years. This isn't even something that I just haven't thought about it. I literally just haven't thought about it. And in that moment, you could say it was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a flood of images and thoughts and crazy flashbacks of the things that happened in his life. And you could say maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe there was some good that could have potentially happened there, but it just broke him. It just completely broke him. And the unfortunate reality is he got lost, right? He sort of, we'll say it was something like something like he went too far. He wasn't prepared enough to handle it, and there were too many problems that he had to confront, and it just crushed him. It just absolutely crushed him, and I'll leave it at that. But you can imagine, that's sort of the idea. The idea is you suppress so many parts of yourself, and you realize that you suppressed it for a reason, because that emotion, that feeling, that memory was vulnerable, and maybe you're not ready to handle it, but the real answer is you should probably handle it one at a time, right? You should probably work towards handling it, because if you don't handle it, then it's just going to keep stacking up, and everything's going to keep stacking up, and eventually it's going to hit you all at once. So all right, I think that's good for now. Yeah, that's good for now. So that is the end of this lecture.